Hello and welcome to 5 Minutes of Postgres. My name is Lucas, and today we're going to talk about two new features in Postgres 15. First of all, we're going to talk about the new unique constraint null support, and then we'll talk about the distinct performance improvements in Postgres 15. First of all, in this post by Ryan Lambert on the Rustproof Labs blog, he talks about the new feature for unique constraints. If you don't know, Postgres 15 is currently in beta season. Beta 2 was recently released, so it's a great time to test things. In this post here, he details the change that Peter Eisentraut made in Postgres 15 to allow unique constraints and indexes to treat null values as not distinct. Ryan goes into more details of what that means. For this, he has two different tables that he's looking at. There's one table, what he called null old style. That's just using a standard unique constraint on two columns. Separately, you'll also note here that for the ID column that's not related to the constraint, he's using the newer syntax here that is generated by default as identity instead of using a sequence in Postgres. If you are on a modern Postgres version, this is actually the preferred style to create auto-incrementing value in Postgres. The second table that Ryan creates here is a null new style table. This is this exact same schema, except the unique constraint here uses this new nulls not distinct value. What that does is it treats null values in the unique constraint differently. Now, the val1, that's a not null column. You couldn't actually insert null values into that column. But for the val2 column, the difference here is that in this second table, if you insert a null value into this nullable column, then it will be treated differently. In Postgres 14, an older versions, unique constraints always treat null values as not equal to other null values. If you're inserting a null value into a table and you have a unique constraint, the null value is considered to be distinct on its own. Null is always different from another null. When you're inserting 5 records into the old null style table, where val1 is just always the same value, hello, and then val2 is always null. Even though you have a unique constraint, it actually supports you inserting that 5 times or as many times as you'd like. Because you have that null value, that makes each row distinct from another. And because the unique constraint includes both val1 and val2, all the rows are unique. With this new nulls not distinct option, if we insert into that other table that has that new option enabled, you can see that we can insert once without problems. But then if we insert a second time, so if we try to insert the exact same row with the same null a second time, then you'll actually get a unique constraint violation. This will tell you we already have this value in the table, it rejects it. If we were to change to val1, if we were inserting world instead of hello, then you could actually insert a second row, and you would see that both of these here are null, but the reason that you were allowed to insert this again then was because the first value here was different. This is pretty useful in some cases. On the Hacker News discussion about this blog post, Peter Eisentraut, who wrote this feature, gave some more context. And the background to know here is that the SQL standard was ambiguous about how this is supposed to work. The way that Postgres chose to do this historically was one way of choosing it. And as Peter notes here, he still thinks that that's the right way to think about it. But then the upcoming SQL standard makes this more explicit and says this behavior is implementation defined. And then there's this new nulls not distinct option that allows you to pick the behavior. The great thing here is going forward, you can expect other databases to also adopt that new SQL standard. And then you'll have a consistent way of defining which behavior you want, if you want nulls distinct or nulls not distinct for your constraints. Now, another change, Postgres 15, was described here by Robert on the Percona blog. This change is about the select distinct feature. In older Postgres versions, you'll see that Postgres generally got a little bit faster here, but the major change here in Postgres 15 is that Postgres can now use the parallel query option as well for queries that are distinct. You can see here that there was a pretty nice improvement on that. In a query plan, that shows up as a gather node, which is used in parallel query. You can see that it does this grouping on, for example, the 10 columns here. The nice thing is that's an automatic change. You don't have to do anything to get that improvement. Once you upgrade to Postgres 15 and you have parallel query enabled, this will automatically apply to your database. Thank you so much for listening. This was 5 Minutes of Postgres. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to hear about next week's episode, and talk to you next week.